welcome, Leslie. Welcome. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much. Good evening to you and good morning around the world as well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Well, so I want to start by giving everyone an introduction to who Leslie is. As some of you might know and some of you might not, Leslie Go is the senior advisor, former chief technology officer for the World Bank Group. She is a fellow at the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance, Judge Business School, and a senior fellow at the National University of Singapore. Leslie brings extensive international experience. She has advised government policymakers, central banks on the regulatory impact from emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, as well as 5G, cloud, and edge computing. Prior to the public sector role, Leslie built a solid technology career in the private sector, from Microsoft to Deloitte and other incredible startups. She is a certified data architect and worked on many high-profile data and AI initiatives in highly regulated industries such as the financial service, healthcare, the life sciences, digital government, and a whole host of other industries. Leslie is also one of our esteemed HPAIR advisor board members, and also on the board of director for the Singapore GovTech. She is also a member of the WEF Global Future Councils on Data Policy, which is a platform that promotes innovative thinking to shape a sustainable and inclusive future for all. So wow, Leslie, that is an incredible career path and curriculum. But I want to give you the opportunity to talk a bit about your background in your own words. And I also know that you have prepared a few slides for the intro. So I'll let you take this start.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate the kind introduction, and it's an honor to be here and to work alongside with all of you in the organizing team for this event. I've learned so much about how strong this team is from a leadership perspective, and about empathy for others who are around the world who are dealing with the pandemic, and also the great organization skills that the team has. So I'm truly honored to be part of this community of like-minded folks, and also helping with this event. So I'm delighted to share some of my thoughts and reflection of 2020 with all of you. So perhaps we can bring up a few slides that I prepared to kind of share with you what I've been working on since 2020, and then going into 2021, what are the things that I'll be working on in future. So as David has so kindly described what I've been, my role is, I work closely with governments and policymakers and regulators to leverage digital technology to address sustainable development goals in emerging markets, primarily at the intersection of technology and policy framework. Today I'm speaking from my personal capacity and viewpoints, and not as an official voice of the institution that I'm affiliated with. Just want to put that disclaimer out there. So let's start with my first slide about my interpretation and what embracing change means to me. And that is about having the grit and keeping integrity in the face of adversity. It is not only about adapting to the changes in the VUCA world, but thriving from each pivot point. I'm very inspired by the poem called Invictus by William Ernest Henley, especially the last couple of lines of this poem. I've pasted here and on the screen. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. I also thought about Charles Darwin's findings. Those who survive are not only the strongest and most intelligent, but the most adaptable to change. So I shared this photo here of the cherry blossom that was taken last March 2020 during my long walks around Washington, D.C. in the Tidal Basin during the COVID lockdown in March. What I've learned is that in spite of the harsh condition, this tree that doesn't have much left, only a trunk, it has persevered during these harsh times and is able to flourish and bring joy to all of us in spite of it all. So that's my inspiration. And I think if you move on to the next slide, it continues on to my reflection of 2020. As a senior fellow at National University of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew Public Policy School, I wrote a short blog about my thoughts for 2020. And I spent most of my time working from home during the lockdown. And it made me reflect on what leadership lessons I've learned over the years, particularly in that program. We had deep discussion about transcendence leadership, where you help others self-actualize by empowering them to be the best they can. And in my own capacity as a leader, I realized that there are many ways by which a person can lead, and someone with the depth and breadth of experience in a given domain may find greater fulfillment in being a thought leader and not just rising up in the management chain. We also need to acknowledge quiet leadership, especially the Asian women leaders who tend to be less vocal and more about action. And ultimately, leadership is about having a higher purpose to make a difference for a better world. So in the coming weeks, on January 20, we will welcome our new president, and we hope that the leadership will guide us towards peace and unity in the United States and globally. As part of my blog about my reflection of 2020, I wrote about the area of my research at the intersection of agriculture, fintech, and climate and sustainability, looking at bridging government and private sector and bringing the relevance back to Asia. So if you go to the next slide, this is where I start talking about, in fact, I wrote a chapter, contribution to the Brookings Institute on the book called The Breakthrough Technologies for Sustainable Development Goals. The idea is to raise awareness of technological opportunities that radically alter the trajectory of sustainable development outcome, and to help foster the linkage between public and private sectors working on domains pertinent to SDGs. And the intention is to foster a sense of technology's potential sources of optimism alongside corresponding risk. And my chapter contribution is about agriculture digital transformation to improve farmers' productivity and strengthening the income of the smallholder farmers that will have a significant impact to poverty reduction. And agriculture is the livelihood for a lot of the poor around the world and impacts at least 5 sustainable development goals. Next, I wanted to talk about the market failures and challenges that are around in the current global food system. A few examples are information asymmetry due to lack of data for the smallholder farmers and lack of interest from the young generation to become farmers. On the positive side, the availability and readiness of technology and data hold the promises to address these challenges. For instance, mobile technology, drone imaging are a few examples of how we can use these technology to give them eyes in the sky and data on the ground. What is critical is the institutional innovation needed to foster the cooperation across public and private sector, and also regulatory framework and policy for a dynamic agri-food tech ecosystem. So then what exactly are these technology? If you go to the next slide, it's about digital technology and data that have the full potential across the entire value chain through the solution that help close the technology gap in order to make this happen. So in 2020, the World Bank Group published a report that outlines the experience from Africa scaling up digital and disruptive technology in agriculture. And this documentation actually is about experiments in Kenya on the novel use of technology in agriculture to encourage million farmers in Kenya. The Kenya project provided a platform to interact with various stakeholders, thus mobilizing knowledge in 4 themes: agriculture productivity, market linkage, farmer financial inclusion, data analytics and intelligence, and all of that, and facilitating the policy and government intervention to create a climate of investment for Kenya to scale up in order to bring in more farmers and increase the productivity as well as climate resiliency for the smallholder farmer. So we move on to the next slide. I want to go deeper into what the technology means. And these are a few of the key technology that leverages upon various aspects of the capabilities that affects the entire value chain in agriculture. And by itself, it can render some interesting outcome. But if you then combine it together, it could really delivers incredible opportunity for the smallholder farmers. The AgTech solution can span across the entire value chain, ranging from mobile apps to e-commerce platform and market intelligence, and that is using the data and analytics effectively. And thus, an agriculture data exchange platform designed with data governance in mind could really unlock the full potential of digital technology and maximize the benefits for private sector and governments altogether. The adoption of these technology will then create that kind of dynamism for the farmers and bring about new generations of young farmers. Next, please. And some of you may ask, what exactly is AgTech? So the AgTech actually covers quite a few spectrum, and we can look at it from the use cases that support the business model for farmer advisory, providing farmers with information on prices, crop planning, weather, pest controls, and disease management. Also around peer-to-peer lending that gets into the fintech space, enabling farmers to have access to credit with low interest rates. And then traceability about first and last mile capability and traceability of food throughout the entire supply chain. And then digital marketplace that connect farmers to consumers directly. And the ability to leverage machinery, robotics, and drones, and leveraging these kind of capability for industrialization and efficiency. And so if you go to the next slide, so there are a few key lessons learned. We found that three critical factors for digital transformation in agriculture, and that would be data, innovation, and partnerships in a strategic way between private sector and public sector, leveraging institutional innovation to foster cross-pollination of knowledge and productive partnership, and catalyzing data sharing, experimentation in an agile way using disruptive technology. And then, of course, scaling out proven solutions through national and level engagement for an efficient, equitable, and environmentally sustainable food system. And we hope that these concepts will apply in Asia. So stay tuned on the updates and the digital transformation when I eventually move to Asia. Thank you. And the last slide, please. I wanted to kind of end on this note for these concepts, where what I've learned from the research in agriculture is that the pandemic accelerated the use of digital technology and created more awareness, including government intervention, in order to deliver a conducive environment for innovations that take place among the private sector and young millennials like yourself. The pace of technology adoption is expected to stay post-COVID-19 and may accelerate in some areas to even greater scale. The adoption of cloud, AI, robotics, and automation is only going to accelerate even more as we plan for the path beyond the pandemic. I was very inspired by World Economic Forum, the Great Reset Initiative. We have a narrow window of opportunity to reimagine, to reflect, and reset our world to create a healthier and more equitable and more prosperous future together. As we plan for the path of recovery from the pandemic, let's look deeper to redefine our social contract. What is our responsibility to the next generation? And that is you. Now is the time for global collaboration to build back better with more resilience, inclusive, and sustainable future for all. And I wanted to highlight Rumi's wisdom. Do not feel alone and the entire universe is inside you. Stop acting so small. We are the universe in a static motion. Set your life on fire. Seek those who will fan your flames. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my presentation with you.
Thank you so much, Leslie. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this primer on agriculture technology and how digital technology has so much potential to change our world. I think especially agriculture technology, or ag tech, as we call it for short, is one of those industries that really have the opportunity to open a lot of new frontiers, as you've explained it. I think before we dive a bit deeper into that technology, though, something that's on a lot of people's mind is you've personally worked in so many different industries, from biotech to GovTech to health tech, consulting, both private as well as public. How did you end up in the world of agriculture technology today?
Well, it's a very good question. So if you notice all the different tech sectors that I've been involved in, right? There is one common thread, and that is my passion and curiosity to learn and to always try to seek out new frontier. So throughout my career, I've always not afraid about experimenting and trying new things. And that to me has been one of my trademarks. And I will always push myself outside the comfort zone, learning about new frontier technology and also applying them. As an engineer, I tend to apply what I've learned in different sectors. And so for me, it is about a growth mindset and inquisitive thinking about wanting to see how I can apply my learnings into new areas. So I started actually in agriculture when I first came to this country as a teenager from Singapore. And I worked in the farm for a few months while I was figuring out what to do. And so that helps me understand what agriculture is all about. And during my time living on the farm, I learned about the basic things about growing crops and livelihood with the farmers and rearing the cattle in the farm. And beyond that, I got a glimpse of the basic things in life, like appreciating nature and going back to the basics of humanity and respect for each other and empathy for those in need. And that carries on with me later chapters in my life. And over time, I've always wanted to go back to agriculture. And the seeds of that return was in Asia in 2015 when I went back with Microsoft to lead the financial services sector. I worked with several banks that were providing fintech capabilities and financial access to smallholder farmers. And that gave me a sense of what it is like. And I read this book called How Asia Works by Joe Stedwell. And he talked about how Asia thrives with the agriculture industry over time and evolves before it became industrialization. So for me, it's about karmic forces as well. How I learn all this and synthesize that at the back of my mind. And this year, well, in fact, last year in 2020, one of my colleagues at the World Bank asked me, so you've done a lot with technology in different sectors. What do you think tech can do for agriculture? And I took that as a challenge to figure out and reimagine what would technology do for digital agriculture, and went deeper into the research and talked to many of the innovators in ASEAN and found out there's so much cool things that's happening in Indonesia, example, where the ag tax is really thriving in conjunction with the fintech. And that got me really excited about what are the potential if we really bring together government and private sector to create that innovation culture with data. And so that's how I come across these new innovation. And of course, Singapore with the 30 by 30 initiative for food security and sustainability. The plan is to increase local food production from 10% to 30% by 2030. And I think that's bold ambition. But that's Singapore. Remarkable things do happen when you dare to dream big.
Very, very, very well said towards the end there, Leslie. I want to come back to the WEF's Great Reset Initiative, as well as Singapore's 30 by 30. But before we go into that, I wanted to dive a bit deeper into the digital transformation that our decade has seen. With the COVID-19 pandemic, it's significantly accelerated the pace of digital adoption as well as digital transformation, including migration to the cloud, as well as just speeding up business changes in general. However, I think something that's on a lot of people's mind is sort of security and privacy continue to remain sort of this major concern, deterring people from using the Internet of Things or AI technology. And so given your experiences spanning across both public and private sectors, as well as your current work specifically with fintechs and ag tech, how do you think sort of policymakers and regulations can keep up with this rapid advancement of data-driven technology while keeping in mind sort of the social contract? And what are some of the challenges or barriers that technology faces today in society?
Some of these questions actually keep me up awake at night as well. As I'm advising central banks and governments on this topic in fintech, how do you design Sandbox to proportionally regulate alongside with fintech innovators so you don't over-regulate a fine balance? As you can tell, this is a fast-moving pace with technology innovation. I also think very much about personal data protection and what are the measures, the safeguards that needs to be in place. Singapore, as a government that really looks into responsible use of data and accountability and transparency as Singapore builds the whole smart nation strategy with data and AI. So I think that's also good examples to look into around the world for some of the lessons learned. But I'm also very much an advocate of change through technology. I'm working very closely with many governments on data governance and ethics to address the unintended consequence of misuse and abuse of data, which is now very ubiquitous and growing exponentially, especially during COVID, with all the digital tools and capabilities. So over the holidays, I read this book called Tools and Weapons by Brad Smith. I highly recommend it. And it talks about technology and implications for jobs, security, and most fundamentally, human rights. And it also talks about tech and data that could be weaponized in the form of many ways like cyber attack, deep fakes, and disinformation. So for those of you who may not know what deepfakes is, it is a term that emerged in 2017 to describe realistic photo, audio, video, and other forgeries generated with artificial intelligence and creating what we call the modern polarization of disinformation and hoax to high-stake warfare for creating social discord and increasing polarization in society and influencing election outcome in 2016, right? We saw that. And many governments are funding academic research, and they're looking into building tools to detect deepfake and media manipulation in the middle of growing threats of large-scale automated disinformation attack. Especially in the wake of the cyber attack on the United States government, I thought it's important for government around the world to join force with what they call the Digital Geneva Convention. Look it up. I think it's a very interesting concept. I also encourage the notion of having new generation of cyber diplomats to forge new alliances of digital diplomacy, and then forming what we call the social contract on data, and the key ingredients being adopting and effectively enforcing a robust legal and regulatory framework developed according to the rule of the law and principles fit for the digital age and inclusive of multi-stakeholder public and private in consideration, and then having the safeguard mechanism of using data that can be regulated in proportionally and contextually localized for the given country or region. And then, of course, having the mechanism to create a unified, highly interoperable and data quality that transcends boundaries in order for us to carry on with trade and exchange in the digital economy. So there's really no clear path forward, as you can see, and no silver bullets. we are raising the discourse at the World Economic Forum on all these matters, and hope that in this conference at Harvard event, we will then raise the awareness among the youth and the young leaders to think about what are the possible solutions for the new generation and what are the challenges that you want to tackle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Leslie. So one expression that is stuck in my brain, and I think we've repeated it many times over the last few minutes, is this concept of the social contract. And I was wondering if you could possibly maybe elaborate on the social contract for some of the delegates who may not be familiar with the term.
Right. So this year, the World Bank Group actually are planning to publish a report called the World Development Report, Data for Better Lives. I highly encourage you to check out the website. The report is not public yet, but a concept note is available. And the whole idea is understanding what are the responsibility that everyone needs to have, individual, society, and national level, globally. And the whole point is to make sure that we take full accountability and responsibility on these matters and creating trust or trusted computing environment so that we can safely exchange information and also be able to share this information and hold each other accountable as data stewards of this information as well. So there has to be some level of transparency and accountability in this whole social contract. So stay tuned to those reports coming out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. So I actually want to come back now to what we were talking initially about, the WEF's Great Reset Initiative, as well as Singapore's 30 by 30 vision, which is attempting to tackle global development challenges that have really changed people's lives post-COVID. And so could you share with us what are sort of the challenges for such bold ambition? And if you can also elaborate on what the Great Reset Initiative is and what is Singapore's 30 by 30, just so people are on the same page.
Of course. So I think the Great Reset is an opportunity for us at this juncture, an inflection point now that we're looking into post-COVID recovery. What are the things that we want to do differently, right? And how do we want to create a better lives for ourselves and the next generation? And what are the tools at our disposal and the kind of safeguard that we need to put in place to protect the vulnerables and then create a more equitable society for all? And from my perspective, some of the challenges I think that are quite big and require these kind of international collaboration is about creating a digital talent pool around the world to participate in the workforce of the future. And that means that the jobs of the future will be quite different. It's not just about the hard skills, such as computational thinking, data analytics, cybersecurity, but also about soft skills, the digital first mindset. As digital natives such as yourself, you may not see that as a problem. For older generations of those who are not digital native, that is a challenge to them. And how to deal with ambiguity in the VUCA world when we're dealing with a pandemic with so many unknowns ahead of us, and having the empathy to help those who are vulnerable, to make sure that everyone have a chance in society, and having the emotional intelligence to know when to help, to take a break and maintain the kind of mental health throughout this whole pandemic. I think those are important dimensions in order to build the digital talent that are ready to be part of the digital economy of the future. I also wanted to highlight another challenge, and that is climate change. Greta was very vocal about that before the pandemic, but I think the pandemic gave us an insight as to what do we need to do better to protect the one and only Earth that we have and create the kind of sustainability across the board. And since I talked so much about agriculture and food security, I wanted to highlight that agriculture is a major part of climate problem.
it generates 19 to 29% of total greenhouse emissions. Without action, that percentage could rise substantially as other sectors reduce their emissions. So additionally, 1/3 of the food produced around the world is either lost or wasted. Addressing food loss and food security is critical to help meet climate goals and reduce stress on the environment. So climate smart agriculture is what we call important to address this agenda. And it's an integrated approach to manage landscapes such as cropland, livestock, forests, and fisheries that address the interlinked challenges of food security and accelerating climate change. And at the World Bank, there's a lot going on, and there 3 areas on climate smart agriculture. One is on increased productivity, producing more and better food with high nutrition, and also making sure that the poor around the world who are dependent on agriculture for livelihood are taken care of. The second is around enhanced resiliency and reducing vulnerability to drought, pests, disease, and climate-related risk and shocks. And the third is around reducing emissions from agriculture and looking at every calorie and kilogram of food produced and avoiding deforestation from agriculture and also absorbing carbon out of the atmosphere. So I think these are very important, big agenda. I don't think we can address it individually, but we need to come together around the world to collaborate on these matters.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that the digital transformation, like you said, is just growing at such a crazy rate that so many sectors are hit in so many different ways, and we really need leaders stepping up in all of these different industries to tackle these challenges. And there are many challenges, as you've named, and we really need now more than ever people focused on this. Mm-hmm. With that being said, Leslie, I know we've talked a lot about digital technology and sort of the challenges with the adoption of digital technology. I want to bring this back a bit more towards your personal career and sort of your personal leadership and how that has changed over the years. So for those who don't know, 2 years ago, Leslie actually gave an empowering TED Talk on empowering women and youth in the face of emerging technologies. Leslie, would you be able to share with us how technologies are going to be able to address gender inequality?
Thank you so much for remembering that TED Talk. It felt like ages ago. It's pre-COVID, right? I have always been a big proponent of gender balance and equality. And coming from poverty, I understand what it meant to be born in an environment where I don't have any opportunity in life. And that's the reason why I did not accept the fate I was born in. I was very fortunate to have a good education, and then coming to the United States, having the education in technology gave me the tools by which I was able to find my voice, not just a career in technology. So to me, tech education opens up the jobs opportunity for women in all around the world, whether you are in the emerging countries or an advanced economy. And that it also gives them the opportunity to be part of a traditionally male-dominated big tech space, such as software engineering, architects, and data science. I also see that sharing economy gives women a chance to be part of the digital economy, and it gives them choices for the labor market participation after having children and allowing them to work part-time from home as gig workers. And it gives them more flexibility to work in a safe environment where they don't have to be out of the house, and more control over their time as homemakers and income earners at the same time. And the sharing economy is rapidly expanding due to the strong penetration of internet, smartphones, as well as advances in technology such as cloud and big data and AI. I also see that tech, as in Fintech, is an enabler to empower women entrepreneurs as smallholder enterprises access to finance in order to participate in the digital economy.
So I'm going to quote you a report that my husband, who is now at IFC, which is a private arm of the World Bank Group, focused on the G20 2020 report on small medium enterprises. And he wrote, digital financial services are enabling women-owned small medium enterprise to improve their ability to make business investments and obtain access to finance to run the business. Many studies have shown that digital financial services can increase women's financial autonomy and support women's participation in the labor force and improve the performance of their business by increasing access to finance. For instance, in Kenya, women market vendors who were provided with mobile savings accounts were able to save more and increase a business investment by more than 60% when compared to a control group. Hence, digital financial services lower the administrative and disbursements of costs for financial products and provides more transparency, and the financial footprints can also be used for the digital credit scoring, where women traditionally don't have bank accounts, loans, or financial product. And his PhD, by the way, is on fintech and financial inclusion. So we're truly the fintech couple in that respect. And then lastly, I wanted to emphasize on tech, as in tech for e-commerce. Now, e-commerce opens up new business opportunity for women, with the ratio of women to men entrepreneurs in e-commerce at or near parity compared to a traditional 1 to 3 in traditional business. So I think these are all the immense opportunity where technology can create the equalizing force for women to be part of the digital ecosystem.
Absolutely. I think these are, like you said, the digital transformation era is a very exciting time for a lot of people. And like you said, hopefully being able to enable more gender diversity and especially for women. So we've been receiving a lot of questions in the comments as we always do. And so I will try my best to try to get everyone's questions. And I apologize in advance if I will skip over a few, just because we have such limited time and there are just so many good questions there. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and start. A Purv, sorry if I mispronounced the name, by the way, asks Leslie, recently the World Bank has contributed huge loans for the development of India. And she wants to ask, how do you think India will progress in the next 5 to 10 years? I'm imagining from the agricultural perspective, as well as possibly finance.
I have to say, my first visit to India was in 2018, because I had a team of great engineers and resources in India, in Chennai. I was so impressed by the quality of the people with great education and a passion to learn and apply themselves. So I am very hopeful that India will come out very strong in future with a very talented digital workforce. And I also realize that agriculture is one of the areas where India has been able to thrive with great varieties of agtech in India. I've been very impressed. I don't spend enough time in India, but I've read quite a lot about agtech in India. So I think the future looks bright. If I will have to look ahead, and I look forward to in future coming back to India, I really enjoy the warm hospitality. And I had my first chance to try on the Indian sari, just so that I can appreciate and respect culture, the beautiful, rich culture in India. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you, Leslie. So moving forward, Saurabh asks, in your opinion, what are some developing countries that can be viewed as models for the adoption of technology in agriculture, and what have they done differently from their peers?
I would say quite a few, actually. I spent quite a lot of time in Asia. So I spent 3 years in, I cover 17 countries in Asia. So I would say Indonesia, being one of them that's very interesting and exciting because of the fintech innovation. And I have to say that fintech has been one of the leading use of technology in Indonesia. I spent quite a long time trying to understand what exactly is creating that kind of innovation culture. As it turns out, a lot of young people like yourself, the millennials, who are using technology in peer-to-peer lending, digital credit scoring, and also in agriculture. So I'm now on the advisory of the ethics committee at AFTEC, which is a self-regulating organization in Indonesia, because this is such a fast-moving pace of new innovation coming up, but yet we also want to make sure that there is that rigor around governance and ethics, as well as safeguards such as cybersecurity. So I'm looking forward to contribute even more in Indonesia. But I'm not biased to Asia. So I also appreciate and respect many countries in Africa. For example, Kenya. I also had the chance to visit my friends in Kenya a few times in 2019, where there is a fintech festival of the first between Africa and Asia. And in July of 2019, I was very honored that the central bank governor of Kenya invited me and my husband actually to speak about fintech and financial inclusion. And I have so much respect for Kenya for leading the frontier in the use of digital financial services with M-Pesa, and they've grown into a huge ecosystem. And I also, in my Brookings chapter, talk about Kenya agriculture with Twiga Food as an example of how they're using technology and also building capabilities to grow the agtech business, not just in Kenya, but throughout Africa. So I think these kind of examples of innovations, looking at problems holistically and applying fit for purpose solution in order to solve these development challenges. I think those are just two examples. I think I could go on and on for many of the other examples, but you get the point that there are a lot of good young innovators who wants to be part of the solution. I would encourage all of you to look into your own country and figure out how we can learn from each other and grow the ecosystem even more. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. I think that the one of the big takeaways for me hearing this is like there's this theme of creative innovation almost, where you take the strengths from fintech, the strengths from ag tech, and then you sort of combine these together, like not necessarily just thinking in very siloed industries, but being able to take these benefits from all different industries. And I think like digital sort of enables people to do that. And so thank you so much, Leslie, for the answer. Giselle asks a very interesting question. She says, global authorities like the World Bank often release guidelines or frameworks to make the business model of agriculture more accessible, but it is often not implemented urgently. How do we as citizens hold large business and the government accountable in implementing these equitable strategies for agriculture?
And which country is that coming from?
That is unclear.
Okay.
But
All right.
I guess you could answer from a general
Sure.
or a specific case.
Sure. I think
it says the Philippines.
I see. Well, I spent quite a few years in Philippines as well. When during my 3 years in Asia, and Philippines has very thriving fintech as well. With agriculture, I think more work needs to be done. I agree with you. I think Philippines have very, very rich history of agriculture knowledge from what I recall in the rice industry, and over the years that has kind of that needs more work to improve upon some of the capabilities. And I'm hoping that when I move back to Asia, I will spend more time perhaps in Philippines to share what I learned from Indonesia. I think as young entrepreneurs and young leaders,
you have many ways where you could leverage your voice, your collective intelligence to come together and raise the discourse on topics that matters to you, and then bring it up to your respective leaders in your own country and tell them how important it is, and then also bring the tech sectors and private sector along to come together in solving these problems. I think those are mechanisms by which I would encourage young people to really come forward and form these kind of organized approach, and bringing like-minded together and suggesting solutions, not just pointing out what's the obvious problem, and looking at how you use technology as a way to enable you to solve these problems. And there could also be other dimensions, such as legal framework that needs to be in place. So that's why you need a diverse pool of resources to come together to solve these problems. By no means is it easy, I fully understand. But I think some of these things also requires the right timing and the conducive environment to make it happen. Frequently, I work in government. I have to have patience and perseverance to make sure that I bring all the key stakeholders together. That's the reason why the concept I'm designing right now, I'm hoping that it will then be operationalized in the region in Asia. So stay tuned to the work that I'm going to be doing when it's safe to move back to Asia. Thank you.
And Leslie, is there a way that our delegates can follow along your journey in the fintech and ag tech world?
Well, thank you for your interest. I usually post them on LinkedIn, which is my professional network. So wherever I could share information, videos, or reports or documents that is of interest to the community, I share readily, because I believe that knowledge is a powerful tool to open the minds to what is possible. And sometimes I actually crowd in the community to help me think through, how do I solve these problems? Because a lot of times we may see things in one perspective, but when we bring it together, the diverse power of everyone brings together a higher level of solutions that could blend the technology with other sectors, other domain capabilities. So please keep me posted as you come across interesting solution in this space. I will be sure to post a lot of my learnings in my journey forward in Asia. And from today's session, I will also be posting on LinkedIn as well for those who will not have a chance to be part of this session together.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Leslie. Another question coming from the University of Delhi. This is Rishab asking, and they're asking, with climate change now majorly affecting agriculture in a lot of societies, how can ag tech help in sustainability and protection of agriculture?
Well, so I kind of remember in one slide I show all the different possible use of technology, whether it's Internet of Things, AI, robotics, drones, blockchain, and so on and so forth. I think these technology surface more insights about data, not just the raw data, but how do you convert the raw data into great insights for better decision making. And it also shine a light on where are the pressing problems in agriculture that we need to address. And so I think what will need to happen is the combination of different use of technology that could surface the problem. For example, right, the soil being one of the highest emissions of the carbon, what's it called? The one I mentioned earlier on climate smart agriculture. And the effective use of technology, such as new research on soil, could then help us understand new approach to go about farming and reducing the greenhouse gas emission. I think those are ways where we can tap upon new innovation that are available in AgTech to help us address climate smart agriculture challenges. So I would say for those who are passionate in this space, continue to
research into it. There's a great blog that Bill Gates published in his Gates Notes on the use of technology to address agriculture challenges. So stay tuned on that one.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie. Another question coming from Anna. She asks, how do you see digital transformation in agriculture solving the extremely low pricing for goods?
Solving the extremely low pricing. Could you explain a little bit more? I need some context there.
I'm imagining what she's asking is how would digital transformation in agriculture push good prices to go lower and more accessible for people?
Oh, I see. So I would say that the market linkages, right, for e-commerce platform will give more access to data from a commodity pricing perspective. Let me use an example of Pinduoduo in China, right? It is the largest e-commerce platform in China with about, I think, 700 million users so far. It is an incredible platform that link farmers directly with consumers and giving that kind of access to consumer taste, preferences, real time, and also creating that transparency of what people like or not like and direct real-time feedback to the farmers. And at the same time, it cut out some of the middleman that's taking a good chunk of the profit margin for farmers. So I would say platforms such as Pinduoduo and many others in Indonesia, you have Honey Hub, you have many others like eFishery. They're connecting farmers to consumers through their platform and be able to give greater insights and more autonomy to the smallholder farmer, hence raising their profit margin and also delivering better produce to the consumer. So it's a win-win for all.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leslie. So we have another question. Actually, this time I know we've been diving a lot into the technical aspect and the industrial questions. I want to switch it up a bit and take some more personal questions. And so one of the questions that I have here is Leslie, how do you, if you had to give advice to yourself when you were around 20 years old, right, and you were navigating this world of career and technology, what advice would you give?
Wow. I have quite a lot of mentees around the world, and I always tell the young generations, folks of your age, to pace yourself accordingly. Life is, I would say, is a journey, and you should take the time to appreciate what is in front of you. And I think COVID gave us a chance to have the inflection point to think and look into our life and focus on what matters most, and that is our loved ones, our family, our own health, and then be able to use this time to learn new skills or to contribute back to society in meaningful ways. So I would say don't rush it. When I was your age, someone gave me the same advice. I actually said, well, you don't know what you're talking about. Just someone who has been over the hill, and therefore I would just go for and charge ahead. And I would say that, in future, when you get to my age, you'll remember today's conversation on January 16, 2021, that what I say is actually quite meaningful, because I now realize with the wisdom of hindsight that I wish I had taken my own advice at that time, because I would then be able to stop and do certain things with more deliberate, with more timing to learn certain areas that I wanted to learn new things, to give myself time to focus on arts, which was my first passion to begin with. And I kind of put that on the side so I can focus on technology and make a living in order to survive. But I think all these dimensions of arts and sciences create a better solutioning than one aspect alone. So I would say
take those moments and during the COVID-19 to really pivot and learn new things that you may not have previously thought through, and use this moment also to reflect on what is your passion and follow your passion. Because when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. That is my advice to you.
Wow, I'm emotionally inspired by that, Leslie, and
Thank
I
you,
really would
David.
add as well, and a lot of people are saying that they're super inspired and that they can listen to you all day, and so thank you so much for sharing that, Leslie. I think another a bit more of a personal and I guess like leadership question from Anand from the Jawaharlal Nehru University. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering these names. But yeah, Anon is asking, how do you see the role of women in realizing the future of Asia? And how can we achieve adequate representation of women at the global level?
Very good question. Thank you so much for asking that. It's a topic close and dear to my heart. Because I wanted to, for the rest of my life, to focus on this topic around women empowerment. My life is only possible because of great leaders ahead of me who gave me the opportunity. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here to speak to you. I had a great education, beneficiary of Singapore, and also wonderful kindness from this country in America that adopted me wholeheartedly when I first came here as a teenager, completely broken. And so I would say the future ahead is bright for young women around the world. On January 20th, we will have Madam Vice President in the United States, first ever in the history of the United States. That speaks volume. The world is demanding more women leadership around the world. But to get to that point, we also need more girls to go into STEM education, to study technology, and also apply themselves in ways that can lead them to a first job in technology and then continue on and seek the path of that calling to reach the highest potential possible. So I would say that we need the men and women to come together to give women a chance to have a seat at the table and to empower them with the opportunity ahead of them, men and women, not just women alone. And also to raise the bar of what equality means, right? Having also women leadership at the board of directors so that women in the boardroom can help create and give voice to diverse views on things that matters to women, the other half of the population around the world. So I would say at all fronts, we need girls, young leaders, and also executive roles for women to make a difference, to help younger women to grow into that space. That's the reason why I'm so passionate about this event. It's about connecting young leaders like yourself with the leaders currently in order for you to be equipped with all the skills and the wisdom from all the mistakes that we made so that you can make the world a better place. So I think the future is bright for the opportunity of women empowerment and gender balance. And we need men and women to come together to make that possible. So I am very hopeful, and I'm thrilled that this event gave me a chance to have that voice to speak about my advocacy. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Leslie. Yeah, like on that note, I think we've really reached a peak of sort of just being incredibly inspired by your words and your thoughtfulness and your insight. And I think it's true. You look at the numbers, you look at what's happening around the world. Things are overall trending very positive, and I think it's this sort of mindset and having all the delegates with us today and this weekend. I think that speaks volumes in terms of the steps that we're willing to take to be leaders in this world and to take initiatives that will move the world into a better place. And so I think on that note, I just wanted to leave it to you. If you have any sort of last words of advice, or any, I know something that the chat loves a lot are book recommendations. And so if you have any like last words, book recommendations, or something that you want to leave as a conclusion, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, David. You've done a marvelous job. I've always enjoyed speaking with you. I think I mentioned the book called Tools and Weapons. I highly recommend that you have a look at that. But I'm also very inspired by the Harvard Business Review article called How Bad Times Bring Out the Best in People. And I quote, "In every moment of darkness, it seems there are countless moments of light, small gestures of compassion and connection that allow people to show who they are, how they want to live, and what matters to them. For me, it is about seeking higher purpose." We talked about purpose, perseverance, and passion during this session. And I also like to quote the late Chadwick Boseman. Sometimes you need to feel the pain and the sting of defeat to activate the real passion and purpose that you are predestined. These are plans that give you the hopes of the future. Look for the purpose rather than just a job. The struggles along the way are to shape you for a higher purpose. To all the delegates and the young leaders around the world who are tuning in today, Carpe Diem, seize the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Leslie. Okay, on that note, I'd like to again thank Leslie so much. It's been such a pleasure, such an honor to have you with us this year. For those who don't know, Leslie was also with us, I think 2 years or 1 year ago, and we're just so privileged to have you speak again. And so thank you again so much. Thank you for the delegates who've attended today, and we'll be ending the session here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the hard work. See you soon. Bye. Stay safe.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.